StrayAllDay.com.
You're now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day, to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative, which is what? That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of wait for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques, all underneath the umbrella of one unifying philosophy that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is the majority is always wrong. And I told you that this was coming, and it is here. Before we get into it, let me remind or inform you that I send out a text message every single day. This message is guaranteed. I send it out every morning to everybody in my text community. Let me tell you what this message does. It is guaranteed to have you focused, sharp, and on point to start your day. Here's the only thing you need to do to get it. I call this message the daily motivation, by the way. Only thing you need to do to get it is text me at my number, which is 305-384-6894. And every day when the daily motivation comes out, because you are a member of my text community, that's the only reason why you'll be getting this message straight to your phone, free of charge. So all of you should be texting me right now to get that daily motivation. If you are not already on my text, if you're not already in my text community and getting the daily motivation, you should be texting me right now to make sure you are getting it. Secondly, Work on Your Game University. That is the place where I do all of my coaching. That is the place where all of my courses are. That is the place where all of my deepest trainings in different areas are contained. You are asking, many people are asking, Dre, how do I get to, what's the next level? What's the next step that I can take in my Work on Your Game journey? I'm in the Work on Your Game world. I'm listening to the show. What's the next thing that I can do? The next thing you can do is join Work on Your Game University. The way you do that is by going to WorkOnYourGameUniversity.com. Again, WorkOnYourGameUniversity.com. That is where you take the next step to upping your game at Work on Your Game University. So again, y'all got that link. Y'all got the text message. All right, those are all the things you could do right now while you are messing around with your phone, while you're listening to me talk. So with all that said, let's get into the subject here today, which is the majority is always wrong. And I told you that a masterclass on the subject was coming, and we are here to discuss it today. Now, a few days ago when I touched on this in one of the points of the episode I was talking about mental slavery. Today I'm going to grab it fully with both hands and we're going to fully examine this. Now, let's start with this. Back in the 1960s, the Social Security Administration in the United States began tracking where people ended up by the time they finished working, by the time they got to retirement age, which back then was around the mid 60s of age, about 64, 65 years of age. Now, these days, people are living longer. The life expectancy is longer, and people tend to be working longer. People tend to not always retire by the time you get to age 64. But as I go through this, you'll understand why. That even though the retirement age has been pushed back a little bit, this data still applies. So I'm going to tell you about some data. So what Social Security Administration smartly started doing, I don't know whose idea this was. It was a great idea. They said, let's track what happens to people as they go through their work lives and see where they actually end up. So we actually have some data as to what's actually happening to people. So we have a better idea of what people may need from us, the government, by the time they get to the end of their lives. This is where the whole idea of the Social Security system came from. Now, while the government is extremely inefficient when it comes to transferring resources, especially things like money, to the citizens, and also the government is one of the least qualified organizations to be in charge of doing this. And Social Security is, by the time people like you and I, if you're under the age of 50, gets to retirement age, there may not be any Social Security for you, so you should not depend on it if you are thinking about it. And one other thing I was going to say that I can't even remember what it was. It slipped my mind as I'm thinking about this here. It may come back to me in a second. Even though the government had this great idea, there are some drawbacks to the Social Security system here in America. But this was a good idea for them to actually want to get this information. So let's get into what they actually found out. So they started tracking people around age 18, because at this time college going to college was not such a popular thing. People did it, but it wasn't as ubiquitous as it is now. So people generally entered the workforce around the age of 18. They retired by the age of 65. So they had roughly 50 years to work. Let's just say 50 years of working. Here's what would happen by the time people got to retirement age after working for 50 years. 1% of people would be financially rich, what you would call rich. And rich is not a matter of how much money you have. Rich is a measure of time. Rich is how long can you continue to live with your current lifestyle without doing anything to generate money. Without doing anything to generate money, how long do you keep living with your current lifestyle? That's the definition of rich. So rich, and I don't know if they define it this way, but this is the way that I'm defining it. These people had enough money they could keep living up to their expected death, and they had enough money that they didn't need to do anything for work, and they could live to their death and they'd be good financially. 1% of people were in that space. 1%. 4% were financially well off. Now, I don't know exactly how they define financially well off, but they were in a pretty good space. Maybe they might need to downsize their lifestyle just a little bit, but they could still live and they didn't need to get money from anywhere else to keep living until their death. That was 4% of people. 15% were still working out of financial obligation, meaning they were still working because they actually needed the money to continue living their current lifestyle. They could not stop working. They couldn't retire because they couldn't afford to. The other 80% were either financially dependent on family or financially dependent on the government or dead, deceased. So 1% rich, 4% financially well off, 15% still working out of obligation, 80% broke or dead. So over the course of an entire adult lifetime, if you're following the statistics here, only 5% of people had positioned themselves in such a way that most people aim to position themselves. Most people, I would assume most of you listening to this right now, want to position yourself in that top 5% to where you are either rich, I mean, you have enough money, you can live the rest of your life without doing anything to obtain money, but you can maintain your lifestyle because you got the money to maintain your lifestyle, or you're at least financially well off, or maybe you might downsize a little bit, maybe you might move from a house to a condo, but you have enough money to take care of yourself for the rest of your life. Only 5% of people put themselves in that position by the time they retired. Again, this is back when Social Security started tracking this data. This is back in the 60s. So what about today? Because you remember me saying this is back in the 60s, you might well be like, Dre, that was decades ago. That was 60 years ago. I wasn't even alive back then, Dre. What about now? How have things changed now? Well, you want to know how things have changed? Let me tell you. Let me tell you the data. There is no data. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. The data is still exactly the same. The people who are financially taken care of by the time they retire today, still 5%. 15% still working, 80% broke or dead, still to this very day, 60 years later. Why? Why? Because people are always going to be people, and the majority is always going to be wrong. You notice those stats? 5% made it, 15% still working, 80% either broke or dead, the majority. The question is, why is this? That's what we're going to talk about here today. Why is the majority always wrong? I'm not going to force feed you the idea that the majority is always wrong. I'm going to support it in my points, but really I want to talk about why, because when you're clear on why, then what you can do as you're listening to me talk today is you can start examining these aspects of your life that I'm going to bring up in my points and ask yourself, what am I doing? And is this taking me where I want to go, or is it not? Instead of you continuing lying to yourself and telling you that something's taking you where you want to go when it isn't. So today is really about me. Actually, I do this every day, honestly. But today I'm going to do it again. It's really about you holding up a mirror to yourself so you can catch yourself in your bullshit if you are telling yourself some bullshit. And if you are, you got to be willing to tell yourself the truth. Point number one. Topic once again today is the majority is always wrong. The question is, why are they always wrong? Here's reason number one, habits. The reason the majority is always wrong because the majority have habits that lead them in the wrong direction or lead them to the wrong outcome. Let's put it that way. They lead them to the wrong outcome. If you want to be different from most people, understand it's not some big bang activity that you must do that's going to change everything. It's not some one thing that you do one random day, 1 year that all of a sudden changes the entire trajectory of your life. Now, it may seem like that to some people, that you may have some one thing that happens that does change the trajectory of your life, but understand there are a whole bunch of micro decisions that went into you ending up in the space that led you to that one decision that changed everything, whether for the positive or the negative. So it may seem like the one thing did everything, but that's not really the case. It's your constant everyday thoughts and activities that put you in a position to do something that ends up changing everything. I've already told you how you can simply look at what the masses of people are doing and do the opposite. Right? You always have that opportunity. So let's take it further. You need to be conscious and intentional about your goals, and consciously intentional about consistently having thoughts and taking actions that are moving you towards those goals. You got to be conscious and intentional about your goals, and you got to be intentionally doing things and thinking things that are moving you towards the goal, not just randomly doing stuff. Reason why the majority is always wrong, and the same reason why most people are average, is because most people spend their days and allow their thoughts to be consumed by nonsense that has nothing to do with their goals. This is the reason why the majority is always wrong, because people use time frivolously on things that have nothing to do with where they say they want to go. I sent out a text message a couple of days ago and asked people, is there anything I never covered on my podcast that I could possibly cover? And I also added the caveat that I was skeptical anybody had any ideas that I hadn't covered already. And I got a bunch of responses, and unfortunately, nobody had a new idea. But I did have some good exchanges, and somebody said to me, they said, well, you could talk about why some people say that they have goals, but they aren't actually doing anything to get to the goals. And I said to that person, well, that's pretty much what I talk about every day. That's pretty much what the thesis of the show is: work on your game. All right. You say you want this. Okay. Here's what you got to do to get it. This is what I talk about every day. That's what I said to this person. I'm like, yeah, what you're saying is basically the whole point of why this show exists. It's talking about the goals that you want to reach and what do you need to do to get them, and the nonsense that people tell themselves about trying to get to their goals. And the person who was texting me, they might be guilty of it, all right, even though they were the one offering the suggestion. So the whole point here is, many people say that they have a certain goal and thing that they want to do, yet they're not taking the actions that are going to get them to the goal. They might think that they're taking actions to get them to the goal. They tell themselves they're taking actions to get to the goal. But if they had anyone who could objectively look at them, and someone who had license to tell them the truth, look at what they're doing, they would say, well, what you're doing is not going to get you to the goal. And here's why: A, B, C, D, E, F. They can just spell it out for them. The challenge for most people is that they don't want to hear that kind of conversation, because that would put you in a position to where you had to do something different than what you're doing. And most people don't want to do that. Therefore, they rather just tell themselves a lie that makes them feel good, rather than hear a truth that will make you uncomfortable, but will help you get better. Many people just do stuff that has nothing to do with their goals. Think stuff and do stuff that has nothing to do with their goals, if they even have goals. All right, most people don't even have goals. Even those who do have goals use a lot of their resources on things that has nothing to do with reaching their goals. In other words, they're very inefficient with the use of their most important resource, which is time, which means you're being inefficient with the use of your life. You're wasting your life away. This is what most people do. Again, most people are average. Anytime you find yourself doing the same thing that most people do, you have to stop doing that. Think long and hard about exactly why you are doing what you're doing. And it's probably not a good reason, and you need to stop and you need to get off that train, go to the other side of the platform, and get on the train going in the opposite direction. Everybody following my metaphor here. Never catch yourself on the same side as the majority on anything in which there is some reasonable point as to questioning the behavior. Now, again, that doesn't mean every single thing you do has to be opposite of everybody. All right? Everybody doesn't run across the highway when there's a bunch of cars coming. I'm not saying you should do that, just so you're not like everybody else. Anywhere where there is a reasonable point of questioning the behavior, that's where you need to be asking yourself, why am I doing the same thing as everybody else? Point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is the majority is always wrong. Number 2, question: are you thinking for yourself, or are you allowing others to think for you? Now, let me tell you something. There's a time where it makes sense to allow others to think for you. All right? If you have somebody working for you, and their job is to, let's say you hire somebody to do some event planning, for example. All right, I'm gonna be throwing a birthday party for my son's first birthday. By the time you all hear this, the party probably has already taken place. And when we hire whoever this event planner is going to be, I'm not doing most of the legwork for this, but whoever we hire the event planner to be, they should figure out most of the stuff. Right? We're hiring them to use their brain. Let them do the thinking. Where are you going to put this decoration? Where are you going to put the little games for the kids to play? Where are you going to put this? So we want some candy. We want some snacks. So we want some food. We want some donuts. Where are you going to get all this stuff from? Where are you going to put it? How are you going to organize everything? Let them figure all of that out. All right? We're hiring them to use their brain, not just their hands. Right? So there are times when it does make sense to allow someone else to think for you. If I hire an assistant and I say, hey, I want you to find me 10 leads that fit this description every day, then I want them to use their brain and find those leads. I may give them some direction. All right, you want to look over here, and over there, but you're going to figure everything else out. All right, assuming they have a certain level of intelligence, I wouldn't hire them if they didn't. I'm going to let them think and figure that out. But there are also times when you had to do the thinking and you cannot abdicate it to anyone else. I had a conversation with a friend not too long ago, and he has a child that is roughly the same age as my child in his first year of life. And we were talking about shots for the kids, like vaccination shots that any of you who's had a child, and if you went through the normal medical industry procedure, at least in the United States, your child comes in. I think what he was saying to me, if I heard him correctly, is that every 3 months, you bring the baby into the doctor and they get a whole bunch of vaccination shots. And he probably doesn't even know what these shots are. We're having this conversation, this is pretty much what he's saying. Every 3 months you bring him in, he gets all his shots. And he was asking me, Dre, do you take your kid in to get shots? I said, no, my kid is not taking a single shot of anything. And this is true. This is a true story, what I'm telling you. And he questioned me why I didn't get my kid to take the shots. And he was saying, well, look, obviously, I know you're not a doctor. I know what you do for a living, Dre. You're not a doctor. So what research have you done to come to such a conclusion? That was what his question was to me. Now, his research, before I get to my research, his research was that the doctor told him to do it. That was his research. The doctor told him to do it. Now, I talked about this a couple of days ago. This is the appeal to authority logical fallacy that befalls many people. Mostly, again, people amongst the masses who accept things based on who said it, not based on what it actually is, but who said it. So a doctor said it, and there are some people who accept this appeal to authority that, okay, anything a doctor says, I'm going to follow. These are people who are usually acting out of medical fear. Because you have fear about anything going wrong medically for yourself or for others, anything a doctor says, you will just follow it because you're afraid of making a mistake. And he even expressed this not in so many words, but he said, I just want to make sure I don't do anything to harm my child or put my child in a bad spot. So that means I'm going to give him all the vaccines because that's what the doctor said, when actually you might be doing the exact opposite, putting his kid in the bad spot by giving all the vaccines. But I didn't even get into that with him because I think he's already bought so deeply into this that is no point. Like, even if I was to have this conversation with him and explain to him how maybe you shouldn't give your kid all those shots, maybe you should look at this, maybe you should listen to this, maybe you should read that. And he's already given his kid all the shots. And I know, as a matter of fact, not just with this individual, but with a lot of people, some of you who are listening to this right now, that often when people get emotionally bought into an idea, there is no amount of logic that is going to take them out of it. So with this guy, that was pretty much the case. There's nothing I could logically explain to him, which I could have, but there's nothing I could logically explain to him that's going to change his mind. So what do I actually get? Now, there was a time in my life when I would take joy in logically knocking down this guy's illogical nonsense, even though he continued to do the same thing. But now I've changed my mind. My time is more valuable than that. There's no point, because his brain is not fertile soil when it comes to this particular subject, meaning he ain't changing his mind no matter what I say. So what's the point of me explaining it to him? There is no point. He already decided what he wanted to do, and he's an adult. That's his child, so it ain't like I could tell him what to do with his kid, nor can he tell me to do with my kid. So the whole point is, this appeal to authority logical fallacy befalls many people because they have decided to abdicate their thinking and think for themselves. See, you have to know where the line is, and each of you gets to choose. Where is the line between thinking for yourself and allowing someone else to do some thinking for you because you trust them to tell you, you trust them to do what you need them to do? Personally, when it comes to certain subjects like the medical industry, especially here in the United States, where the medical industry is a for-profit machine, it is not a for-health machine, it is for profit. You should take anything you hear from the medical industry with a grain of salt. That's my way of thinking about it. If you think differently, you're free to exchange with me and tell me why, as long as you can put some substance behind it. I don't think anybody can put any substance behind that besides, well, this is what the doctor said, and you're not a doctor. It doesn't prove anything. Again, the medical industry in the United States is driven by money. All right, any of you who didn't know, the COVID quote unquote vaccine, which wasn't really a vaccine, you know that every time you took one of those shots, the companies that developed the shot got paid, right? You know that every shot made them money, even though the shot was free for you. It made the pharmaceutical companies money every shot that was given out. So if you're wondering why, what was the incentive for the industries and the doctors and everybody to push the shot on you so hard, even though it was free? I mean, what are you getting out of it? Why do you care so much if I get a free shot? It's because they made money off of every shot that was given. That is a actual fact. So any of you who didn't know that, you always need to know the angle of anybody. Anytime anyone is pushing you to do anything, you need to know their angle and why they are getting you to do it. Does not necessarily mean that they are wrong. Doesn't necessarily mean that they are nefarious or malicious, but you should know their angle so you can start asking questions. The more information you have, the better informed you'll be, and the better you can make decisions. The medical industry in the United States is all about giving you as many drugs, shots, interventions, and operations as possible, because every single one of them comes with a price tag. Every drug you take, every shot, every operation, every intervention, all of those things, your insurance or you are getting charged directly for it. You are pregnant, you're having it, and the doctor tells you, well, hey, we got to induce your labor, because if you don't hurry up and have the baby, you're going to have some kind of complications, and you're going to get injured, or the baby might die, or you might die. So they're trying to get you to have the baby as quickly as possible. Here's the reason why they want to do that, because they want to get you out of that hospital bed as quickly as possible so they can put the next person in the bed, because you got a bill for being in the bed. And the more people they put in that bed, the more bills they can charge. So if you stay there for 2 days instead of for 2 hours, then you're taking up time that they can be charging other people. All right, that is a fact. All right, that's how it works. All right, this is how the medical industry works. Any of you who has a baby, many of you have kids, and you get induced, and the doctor tells you, well, we got to induce you. We got to put a shot in you to make you have the baby faster. That shot, just the shot itself, that goes on your bill. Your insurance has to pay for that shot that you took. You have a natural birth and no shots, and it generally takes longer because it's not being forced. It's not being unnaturally forced. It takes longer, but guess what? They can't bill you for that because it ain't costing anything extra. You get what I'm saying? So this is how the medical industry works. The shots. Any of you who's ever gone to the doctor and the doctor had you take a bunch of drugs that you ended up not needing, or get some operation that you ended up not really needing, or doing something that ended up being completely useless, but you had to pay the bill for it, you may have understood what the game was. And here's the bigger picture of all of that. The doctors and the nurses are not on purpose. They're not all in cahoots, all trying to lie to you. They're not all in this big conspiracy trying to lie to you. Here's the thing. This is what they get taught when they go to school. Doctor schools, or medical schools rather, which teach the doctors and the nurses, know who pays for those medical schools? That ain't all tuition money. You ever been to the campus of a medical school in the United States? These are very beautiful campuses, these big buildings and these nice libraries, and they all look so state of the art. You know who pays for those? That is not all paid for by tuition money. No way. You know what it's paid for by? Pharmaceutical companies. The pharmaceutical companies that sell you the drugs are the same companies that pay for the college campuses where your doctors and nurses got taught for 8 years. And guess what? They also pay for the textbooks. They also commission the textbooks. The people who write the books, they teach the doctors and the nurses. So the doctors and nurses come out of school, quote unquote, educated on how medicine works. Well, guess what? That stuff has been ingrained in them. That stuff has been indoctrinated in them for the last 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years in college by the textbooks and by the teachers that they've been taught by, who are funded by the pharmaceutical companies, which then they go into the hospitals and into their private practices, and more in the hospitals than the private practices. But they go into the hospitals and they prescribe you drugs because that's what they were taught to do. So this is not some conspiracy by them. This is what they truly believe is helping. Everybody get what I'm saying here? This is the hustle. And it's more... Actually, it's disrespectful to call this a hustle. This is more than a hustle. This is like what do I call this? We got to give it a better word than hustle. This is more than hustle. A hustle is like, selling $5 bags of marijuana. That's a hustle. This is bigger than a hustle. It's much bigger than that. But hopefully you all are getting the point of what I'm saying here. This is why you got to think for yourself. I'm just using the medical industry as an example here to paint the picture on, but you got to be doing your own research. The world that we live in today is a world where doing your own research is very simple to do. Not necessarily easy, because people are fucking lazy, and some of y'all are just fucking lazy. That's why you don't do your own research. But it's easy, or let me say simple, to do your own research. Easy means something that you can do or that you will do. Those of you who are willing to put in a minimal amount of effort, you can find out information relatively easily these days. That's the good thing about the internet, is that we are so interconnected. You can find any information you're looking for if you just simply look for it, and you ain't got to look that hard. Challenge is, many people are simply unwilling to put in this minimal amount of effort. In the world in which you could depend on and trust authorities to tell you what was best for you, I told you this 2 days ago, that world is done. It's over. It ended sometime within the last 10 years. You could decide when in the last 10 years, but it's over. Okay? You cannot trust people in positions of authority just based on their authority. You can trust them, but not because of their authority. Trust them because of who they are. And because you can listen to what they're saying and it logically makes sense to you. Not emotionally makes sense, logically makes sense. Those are two different ways of making sense. And many human beings don't have the ability to think critically, so they never consider whether something logically makes sense. They only consider if it emotionally makes sense. This is how a lot of people get duped and bullied and scared into doing things that in the hindsight look stupid because they simply weren't thinking. Everybody follow what I'm saying here? Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is the majority is always wrong. Number 3, accept nothing at face value. Always consider people's angles and incentives. I just explained this to you. The angle and incentive of the medical industry is that they get paid for every single thing that you agree to have done to you. You are very rarely going to go to a doctor or a hospital and they say, all right, well, you have an ailment, but no, you don't need to do anything. Just take a nap and you'll be good. Very rarely is that going to happen. They're always going to give you something. Take this medicine, take this shot, do this to your body, do that to your body. If you read the article when I told you about my son's birth, I gave you a story about when I had an issue with my knee. This was in early I believe it was either 2020 or 2021. Don't remember which year it was. I was having an issue with my knee, had some swelling in my knee. I went to 3 different medical places in the whole process of this one issue. First they did an X-ray, then they did an MRI, then I went to see this renowned, esteemed doctor. And after doing all of those 3 things, the doctor said, well, what we need to do is give you a cortisone shot, and it's going to destabilize your knee, meaning you won't be able to bend your knee for 8 weeks. You're going to put a brace on your knee. You're going to be on crutches for 8 weeks. At the end of the 8 weeks, then we're going to send you to our guy who's a physical therapist. He's going to help get you back in shape. That's what the process is going to be. That's what he suggested. I did not do that. But between the X-ray, the MRI, and seeing this doctor, 3 different places, 3 different trips, you know how much money this costs? It's about $3,000 out of pocket. It's about $3,000 that I spent on those 3 trips just to get that advice from this renowned, what do they call, orthopedist, this doctor, who actually works for the Miami Heat, by the way. That's what he suggested that I do. Now, after all of that, I reached out to Maria, who had been my trainer when I was an athlete, and asked her about the situation. She gave me a little bit about some shit that she had been through. It wasn't about a knee, but when she had been to the hospitals and they had her do a whole bunch of bullshit. And she said, look, I'm not in Miami. I would help you if I was in Miami, but I'm not in Miami. Why don't you go see this guy? And she mentioned a guy who I know, my guy, Brian, who is a personal trainer as well, a physical therapist. I went to see Brian. I told him the situation. He said, come to my house. I'll help you out. This was in 2020. I remember because this was like right around the COVID time. So this is in 2020. I went to Brian's house. I was there for an hour. He showed me like 6 exercises that I could do for my knee. He said, Dre, do these exercises twice a day for 6 weeks. I did exercises twice a day for 6 weeks. I haven't had a single issue with my knee since, not one. I have not missed a single workout due to knee issues in the last 3+ years after seeing Brian. You know how much I paid Brian? $100. $100 for an hour after I spent $3,000 at these hospitals. The whole point is not necessarily that the hospitals, again, not that they're necessarily bad. They are incentivized to have you do shit because they charge you for everything they have you do. You need to get an X-ray, you need to get an MRI, you got to go see this renowned orthopedist. Brian didn't ask for an X-ray or an MRI or what the renowned orthopedist said. All he said was do this, and this, and do it every day for 6 weeks, and it worked. He didn't need any of those things. Everybody understand what I'm saying? This is a system. That's the system. So accept nothing at face value. We're on point number 3. Always know people's angles and incentives. The COVID jab. Let's go back to that. I like to use this as an example because everybody knows about it. That's the reason that I use it so often. But I like talking about this because I know a bunch of y'all got it. And some of you have come to realize, like some of you still believe that it was the right thing to do. Some of you have come to realize that you were duped and lied to. And some of you didn't get it, and you're glad that you didn't get it. Some of you didn't get it, and you're sad that you didn't get it. You could probably go get it for free somewhere if you wanted to this day. The COVID jab was free. Let me ask you a question. Whether you got it or not. All right, the COVID jab was free, right? Why were so many of us being coerced into getting something that was free if it was indeed life-saving? If the COVID jab was going to save your life, why did we have to be browbeaten into going and getting it? If it was actually going to save, if something's going to save my life, you don't have to browbeat me into getting it. If something's going to save my life, and if I don't do it, I will die, then you can sell it to me for $1 million. Even if I ain't got $1 million, I'll go get it because it's going to save my life. But it was free. The COVID jab was free. So why did it have to be forced upon people? Can somebody answer that question for me? Somebody email me or text me. Tell me why, if the COVID jab was indeed life-saving, why did it have to be forced? If something is literally going to save people's lives, why did it have to be forced? Is it because people are just hard-headed? They don't want to listen. They don't want to take things. They don't want to do things because people are just, they're so caring about their rights. They don't care about saving other people. Okay, let's just assume that was what people were saying in 2020. But here we are, 2023. A bunch of people who did not get the jab, including myself, we're still alive and we didn't kill anybody. Now, explain it. What's your answer now? Now, I can understand you saying that 3 years ago. What are you saying now? How many people would just admit, damn, they got me. They got me with that jab. That was some bullshit. I shouldn't have got it. Now I realize that they got me. I'm not going to let that happen to me again. How many people have you heard say that? How many of you who should be saying that are willing to say it? Why you had to be forced to get something if it was saving your life? I'm just trying to understand. I'm still trying to figure this out. It's going to save your life. Why did you have to be forced to get it? If something's going to save your life, you can charge me as much money as I got for it. You can charge me everything I got. I'll pay for it. I'll give you all the money I got to buy more time. It's going to save my life. But it's free and you got to force it on me. You got to tell me that you remember what the White House said? There's going to be a winter of death, and there's going to be a dark winter of death for everybody who's unvaccinated. Remember, the White House actually put this statement out. This is an official statement from the White House. And this is in the winter of 2020. They said this, or 2021. This was after, this is when Biden was in charge. This is after Trump. Many of you, if we're being honest, never questioned any of this stuff. That's why I'm bringing it up, even though it logically makes no sense whatsoever. Years later, we can see that it doesn't add up. All right, again, 2020, I can understand you having this position. But now, what's your position now? You can't explain that with that now. It was obvious to me back then, but it should be obvious to everybody by now. Let me ask you a question. Any of you ever flown first class? Anybody listen to this ever flown first class? If you ever flown first class more than once, I can understand the first time you didn't know what it was like. But if you have flown first class more than once, then the second time and every time subsequently after that, you did it on purpose. Why? Because you liked it, right? And you liked it enough that you were willing to pay extra for the convenience of flying first class. I like to fly first class damn near every time I fly these days. As long as it's available and I'm not forced to get on a flight that I absolutely have to get on, I will wait till I get on a flight that I can get first class. And the reason that I'm willing to pay extra to fly first class is because I like it enough that I'm willing to pay more money for it. Now let's juxtapose that with the COVID jab. It was free. It didn't cost anything. Yet people were being threatened, cajoled, and forced into getting it. Some of you were in college. You got forced into taking it. You couldn't come back to campus. Some of you got jobs. You were forced to take it. You couldn't come to work. And on top of all that, this is allegedly a vaccine, right? Isn't that what they called it? A vaccine? It wasn't a vaccine, but that's what they called it. And it didn't inoculate you from the virus, which is what the definition of a vaccine was until the Center for Disease Control changed the definition of a vaccine to say, oh, well, it mitigates the effects of the virus. That's now what a vaccine is. Bullshit. Make that make sense. Somebody make that make sense. My mom got COVID. And, well, first of all, my parents went and got every COVID jab that came out, right? So the COVID jab came out in... It became widely available around the spring of 2021 or 22, 21. 2021. It was Donald Trump. This is not a partisan point. Donald Trump is the one who came out and said we're going to get this get this vaccine out as quickly as possible, and everybody's going to be safe from the virus as soon as they get the vaccine, which was not true. Now, either he was lying or he was misled. And then Joe Biden came out and said the same thing. Again, either lying or misled. They both did it. So this has nothing to do with Democrat or Republican. 2021, I remember the shot became widely available, and everybody's able to go get the shot. My parents went and got the shot. They went and got the one, I don't know which one it was, where you get 2 shots. You got to get one, and you wait 3 weeks, and you get another one. They went and got that. Then they went and got all the boosters. So my parents got like 5 or 6 shots combined. I mean, each. 5 or 6 shots each, right? In the summer of 2022, 2021, I don't remember if I saw them, but summer of 2022, traveled to Philadelphia. My mom had gotten COVID she had gotten COVID like a month earlier than that. My mom has a notoriously weak immune system. She gets sick and she just stays sick longer than most people stay sick for anything. This is way before COVID. She just has a notoriously weak immune system. She went and got all the COVID jabs. She got COVID like a year after she got all the jabs and all the boosters. She was sick for like a damn near 2 months with COVID, vaccinated and boosted, sick for like 2 months. Remember, I went to Philadelphia. I'm sitting in my parents' living room. Both of my parents had cloth masks on their face while we're sitting in the living room of their home. They're talking to us with cloth masks on their face. This is the silliest, dumbest shit. I'm not calling my parents dumb, but what they did was silly and dumb. And they're sitting there with masks on. And we're having this conversation. My mom said out of her mouth, well, it's a good thing that I got all the vaccines because it would have been worse. This is what they taught everybody. Everybody who got the jab, who ended up getting sick anyway, that was the cope that they gave you all so that you didn't feel stupid for doing something stupid, which is, oh, well, at least you got the vaccine because it would have been worse. No, the vaccine might have made it worse because what it did, again, it was an experimental drug. You don't know what was in it. You just put it in your body because the doctor told you to, or because the government told you to, or whoever told you to. You don't know. You didn't do your own research. You went and put that jab in your body, and now you got the virus anyway, which means whatever you put in your body was anything but a vaccine. You don't even know what it was, and you don't want to find out because it's kind of like covering your face up so you can act like you don't see the things right there in front of you. This is what happened to people. And again, this is what happened. And I'm using my parents as an example here, but this happened to millions of people. Okay, I'm just using that because that's personally what happened. I saw it. But this happens with millions of people. You can't make sense of this because it doesn't make sense. The reason so many people bought into it because people like to accept things at face value without questioning them, especially from an authority figure. What I'm telling you is the majority is always wrong. Stop doing this. This is what the majority does. This is what the masses of people do. This is what sheep do. Do not be a sheep. Point number 4. Today's topic, once again, is the majority is always wrong. Number 4, beware fear and greed. These are 2 emotional triggers that are used heavily to move the masses to action. Fear and greed. For example, if you don't do this, this bad thing will happen. What is that? That is fear. Someone tells you what the bad thing is. You're afraid of the bad thing. So they tell you what you got to do to avoid the bad thing. So you go do it without thinking about, does this even make sense? And could I deal with the thing that they claim is going to happen if I don't do it? This is the White House. Again, in the winter of 2021, they said anybody who is unvaccinated will deal with a winter of death and despair. That's what they said. LOL, because that did not happen. Or the opposite end of the spectrum is do this because it's an easy way for you to get something for nothing. Example of that is people who take diet pills or go get surgery in lieu of eating right and exercising. All right. Oh, so you didn't exercise for 30 years. Now you're 40 pounds overweight. So just take these diet pills and that'll do everything. You don't even got to worry about going to the gym. Bullshit. Doesn't mean you won't lose the weight, but at what cost? Getting something for nothing. That is greed. Doing something because you're afraid of what would be on the other side. That's fear. You must be aware of these things. Does not necessarily mean that they're wrong or lying, but you must be aware and ask yourself logically, rationally, controlling your emotions. Does this actually make sense, or are they just trying to move me to action by trying to scare me or dangling an easy carrot in front of my face? Sometimes I'm on Instagram or TikTok, and I see women who I know with a high level of accuracy did not develop their bodies in the gym. Let's just put it that way, if you know what I'm saying. Yet they're selling fitness gear and workout programs to other women. All right, so buy my new workout program, my new Booty Blaster workout program. I'm looking at the video and I'm looking at this person's profile and I'm like, bitch, you did not get that waist or that ass from going to the gym. You know you didn't get it at the gym. You got that at the doctor. But now you're going to sell other women on how to get a butt like yours by working out. But you didn't get yours by working out. All right, that's bullshit. That's greed. That's get this thing. All you got to do is this, even though you didn't get yours that way. You're dangling the easy carrot in front of somebody. I hope you ladies aren't buying into this nonsense. And gentlemen, I hope y'all ain't buying into it either. All right, y'all got to know the game too. Remember the first rule of economics. First of all, of economics, there's no such thing as a free lunch. All right, everything has a cost. Okay, law number 42. Law number 42 from the 48 laws of power is to despise the free lunch. Beware of anything that seems to be handed to you too easily and not with requisite effort on your behalf. Anything that's handed to you easily without effort, beware of that. That is called the free lunch. There is no such thing as a free lunch, everybody. Everything has a cost. That is not to say that everything you achieve must come with years of struggle and strife. But somebody must put in the effort in order to make an opportunity happen. Things don't just fall in your lap easily with no work. That doesn't happen. Again, it doesn't have to be you that does all the work, but anything of value requires effort. All right, do not be fooled. My economics professor told me about the free lunch thing. He also said one other thing that I remember in economics class in college. He said the lottery is a tax on the stupid. The lottery is just an easy way for the state to collect money from people who are dumb enough to think that if they put $5 down and pick a bunch of random numbers, that they can randomly be rich the next day. All right, just think about that. That is something for nothing. That is greed. The lottery plays on the greed of the stupid. I put down $5, pick random numbers, and tomorrow I'll be rich. Really? That's how you think you're going to get rich? That is what you're paying. That's the stupid tax. Playing the lottery is what we call the stupid tax. How dumb of a proposition is that? If you really think about it logically, that doesn't make sense, does it? Like, some of you should be laughing at that right now. I think you may be. Like, that's what it is. It's a tax on the stupid. So how much of this nonsense are you falling for? And every time you do, understand that you're doing the same thing that the masses do, and the masses are sheep. And you know where sheep end up? They happily walk into the slaughterhouse. They don't even know what's coming. They become coats and lamb chops. All that said, let's recap today's class, which is the majority is always wrong. I touched on this a few days ago. My points on mental slavery. Today, we're going to grab it with both hands. Number one, habits. You want to be different from most people. It is not some big bang activity that changes everything. It's your constant everyday thoughts and activities. Do you have the habits of people who are successful or the habits of losers? All right, pick one. Number two, are you thinking for yourself or allowing others to think for you? There are times when you can allow others to think for you, but you need to draw the line as to where you grab the wheel and where you allow others to grab the wheel. And you need to know exactly where that line is and always honor that line. Do not get lazy and let other people think for you in areas in which you should never be passing the buck. Number three, accept nothing at face value. Always consider people's angles and incentives. If you don't know what they are, you need to find out what they are before you make a decision. You always need to know somebody's angle for why they want you to do something or why they would not want you to do something, because there is always an angle. No human being on this planet who has control of their mental faculties does something for nothing. Everybody has a reason why they do what they do. You need to know it before you make decisions. And number four, beware of fear and greed. These are two emotional triggers that are used to move the masses to action, because the masses are easily scared into taking action or non-action. They're easily enticed by greed. So you got to make sure you are not doing what the masses do. I just told you this. So do not allow fear. Hey, if you don't do this, this bad thing is going to happen. It's usually nonsense. This is used to scare people into doing stuff. And it usually works because people don't think and people are mentally lazy. Or, hey, you can get this thing really easily. Again, think about the lottery. Put down $5, pick some random numbers. Tomorrow you're going to wake up rich. All right, if you really thought that's the way you're going to get rich, then you deserve to pay the tax. Give all your money to the lottery. So you don't deserve to have any. All that said, text me. Tell me the best point you got from today's class. The number is 305-384-6894. And Work on Your Game University. That's where I do all my coaching. You want to get to a level where you are never, ever, ever having much in common with the masses of people. So you would never end up at the bottom of the pyramid. Go to WorkOnYourGameUniversity.com and let's stop playing around. Work on your game. Dre all